Hello and welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey and Sunday Encounters. I hope everybody's doing all right out there tonight. With me, of course, my Sunday night co-host, Jackie. How are you doing, Jackie?
Doing good. Thanks, Daniela. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We've got a great guest tonight, the creator of Vault of Nightmares
Yeah.
channel on YouTube. Vault, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How y'all doing? Thank y'all for having me here.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So tell us about your channel, and is nightmares something you suffer from?
No, ma'am. Uh, it's I picked up the name for my call sign used to be the vault keeper. I got picked up that name years ago in the PMC community, and I just kind of went with it, stuck with it. I've been called that for 20 years, and when I was trying to figure out something to go along with that, DW, a very good friend of mine, Dark Waters, he said, man, he said, well, all the nightmarish things you've seen, done, and stuff like that, he said, nightmares. I was like, I never thought of that. So
Mm,
the Nightmare Nation was born.
yeah, it's a good name.
Yeah.
So, I know you've had a lot of encounters, but where did it all start with you?
I was about 15 years old on my grandfather's farm, and me and my cousin, and he just now got comfortable enough to start coming on YouTube. And I'm actually going to do a show with him to have him here in the studio where everybody gets his side of the story. Well, we were out hunting, and on my grandfather's place, there was an area that was no man's land. You didn't go there. He didn't, under no circumstances, and we all knew this. Well, this deer that I'd been patterned for since the year before, big giant deer, I'd figured out that it was coming through that area. Don't know why, but it was. So I'd snuck down there into where I wasn't supposed to be and stuck a stand in there. And a couple of months of what this was way before hunting season actually started. Well, and I remember this because there were certain things that just locked it in. Like I said, I was 15, and I can remember exactly what time it was of the year because we had just gotten out the week before school, the week before Christmas, and it was like the second or third day we had been out. And any hunter or whatever will tell you, like I said, this deer was old and it was smart. And I had the stand sitting in a certain spot where the wind had to be blowing from a certain direction to make sure it couldn't wind me. And the way the wind was coming from, it was actually coming from the bottom of where I thought this stand of trees where this deer was going to come from, straight into my face. Well, we got up there in the stand. This was a stand that I had made. It was made out of drill stem pipe, small drill stem, like around here what they drill water wells with. It's not the big, it's probably, I don't know, a little bit about the size of a Coke can.
Okay.
And the way I'd made the stand is it was two people, it was fixed for two people, but it wasn't where we were sitting side by side. We're sitting like I'm sitting like I am now, and his head comes up right about where my knees are below me. So he's sitting down lower than I am. At the time, like I'd made this, I didn't know exactly how to make one that was two-seater out by their, side by side. So I just made it like that. He was about 12 years old, and he was just now getting into hunting. He was actually using one of my weapons, which was a shotgun, and I had just got for my birthday that year my first high powered my own rifle, 30-06, and I was using it. And like I said, we got in there about 2 hours before daylight, and we were sitting there, and right before we started hearing anything, this odd smell. I'm talking about just a raunchy smell hit us. Well, I assumed it was because it was during that time. It was rut season for the bucks. Rutting buck stinks. I'm talking about just stinks. I thought that's what I was smelling. I was like, hey, I think that's him. He must be marking one of his areas or, you know, because they'll make scrubs and they'll urinate in those scrapes and stuff to attract does. I thought that's what we were smelling. And it was a pine thicket there. And the trees were about 12 foot tall. They were about the size of your wrist and up. That, you know, they wasn't real big, but they were about 12 foot tall. Well, as it starts to get lighter, you can notice trees back there are moving, like the tops of them. Me, not knowing, I'm thinking that Buck is back there just going crazy, doing rubs. I was like, man, he is really active today. I said, he'll be out in just a little while. Just watch, because he would come out of those pine trees where he would be bedded up, and there was a white oak all around where we were was white oaks. So he was coming out of there, coming to feed, and would go right back in there. He didn't have to go very far. That's what I'd patterned him doing. So we're about 75 yards at the max away from this wood line where he's going to come out at. And it's going to walk straight up this hill, straight to us. And there's a big old white oak tree that had acorns about the size of your thumb. So I knew where he was going to come to. And it would have been at that time about 45 yards away from us. Easy shot. And we're sitting there, and like I said, we can still see the trees moving. And we had heard something, but I thought it was a deer grunt. Anybody that's ever heard a buck in the wild, it's you know, just I associated it with that. I said, we're thinking deer whole time. I hadn't even thought about Bigfoot at that time. I didn't really even know we don't call them Bigfoot down here. We call them boogers. In the South, your parents would tell you, hey, you better get inside or the booger's going to get you or whatever after dark. I just thought that was something they were telling us kids to keep us inside or keep us in the yard. Found out the hard way that ain't what it is. But anyway, we're sitting there, and I caught movement. Like I said, about right there in that wood line, and then I seen the trees move, and I'm leaning down like this, whispering to my cousin, "Hey, that deer's fixing to walk out. Stay calm. Stay calm." Now, he's got the rifle. He's holding the weapon like this. He's got the fore end of the barrel is pointing out this way. He's got the weapon in his hand and like this because he's right-handed. And he's like sitting there holding it. And I told him, I said, until I tell you to shoot, don't do nothing. Well, we're sitting there, and I'm waiting and waiting. I'm like, man, this sucker's done hung up. He's not coming out. Something's done. He don't like something. Well, so I pick up my rifle and I turn in the stand. I'm sitting in the stand like this because we're looking dead at it. And I just turn like this, and I put up my rifle because he has my binoculars. I have a scope on my rifle. So I'm looking through the scope, and I'm scanning the trees right there. And all of a sudden I come across this brownish, like khaki color. I'm like, there it is right there. Then I got to look, the more I got to looking, I was like, man, this deer's bigger than what I thought, because the hair on it just was probably 4 inches long. That's odd for a deer. I'm like, damn, this deer's so old. It's got, excuse my language, I didn't mean to cuss. He's so old, he's done got shaggy coat. I've only seen one old deer like that before, and that was actually up north. But I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, that's going to be a monster deer when he walks out. And I'm sitting there, and as I'm looking, I'm like, and I see it move, but it doesn't, the movement I'm catching don't make sense to me. I'm like, because I all I can see is a patch of fur at first, but it kind of like moves up higher. Now this thing's already about what I'm seeing is about the level of the deer, probably about 2.5 foot off the ground. That I'm thinking I'm looking at it along its back or something. Well, this thing like moves way up to about the 5 foot mark. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And I got to looking, and I noticed what I'm seeing is to show you on camera. It's standing in amongst a bunch of little trees like right here. I seen this part of its arm, and I didn't realize it. and it brought its arm up like this, and all of a sudden I seen an arm come out and it pushed trees back.
Wow.
Then that's when everything changed. I'm like, what in the world? Now, to let y'all know how far back this was, Return of the Jedi had just come out in the theaters, and we had seen it just a couple of weeks before that. And that's how long ago that's been. I'm telling my age. But this thing moves its arm back and kind of like half steps out. Now I'm looking at something that looks like the ugliest Chewbacca outfit I've ever seen in my life. And it's probably about that much shorter than these 12-foot tall trees.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there and, man, everything's going through my head. And I'm sitting there like, why in the world would somebody be running around out here in a Chewbacca outfit during hunting season? That is the stupidest. This guy's going to get himself killed. And why is he on our land trespassing? And then it hit me. I don't know anybody this big. This don't make sense. This guy would have to be bigger back then. Wrestling was real big. Andre the Giant, biggest dude I've ever met in real life. He would have made Andre look small. And I'm like, man, that is a big costume. That's a big person. Now, my cousin is not saying nothing, and he's looking that way. And all of a sudden, this thing starts going. Now we can hear it as far away as we are, making these noises. And I think that's what it was doing up in those trees. I thought was a deer grunt. Now I can see what's doing it, and it ain't a deer grunt. So I tell my cousin, and I said, it hasn't seen us. We're back up in the tree. Now we have no orange on, because in Mississippi, as long as you're over 16 foot off the ground, you don't have to have, 12 foot, you don't have to have orange on. So we're in full camouflage. We're hidden, and we're up in this little white oak tree in the stand. And I tell my cousin, he's sitting there still with a weapon like this. And I told him, I said, since when are you? I said, I want you to take and move around, and just don't move real fast, and point your weapon down range in case. I said, I don't think that's a person. In case this thing comes up this way, don't. I said, just be easy. Now I'm whispering this to him. He's shaking, and this is a metal stand we're in, metal barrel. And as he moves, he clinks that barrel against that stand. And as soon as he clinked that barrel, it was like he zeroed in radar right on where we were. Mm-hmm. And this thing looks up, and I'm looking through a scope, a 3x9 scope, and it's not but 75 yards roughly away. And I've got it on about full power, so it looks like I'm like 20 yards away from it. Yeah, right there. And this thing's facial expressions changed, the whole 9 yards. This thing got teed. I'm talking about he did this, like not with his hands, but his face kind of looked like he was trying to smile, but it wasn't no smile, and I could tell. And the sounds he was making, and then his chest just started like heaving, and you can hear him breathing that far away.
Wow. And
he makes like 3 steps, and it was so fast. He covered probably 10 yards in those 3 steps just like that. And it apparently had freaked my cousin out, and I did not realize he had took his weapon off safe, and he squeezed off a round.
Oh, wow.
And when he squeezed off that round, I do believe the way we used to load our shotguns was buckshot, slug. It's called a commando load. The way we were taught to do it. But I think the first round was buckshot. And I do not think if maybe one pellet hit him, it would have been lucky at that distance. But it teed him off even more than what he was, and he started up that hill at us. I'm talking about he was covering ground so fast it was like time stood still. I fired off with a Remington 700 bolt-action rifle. I was able to get off 2 rounds before he got to us. Where all I was doing, I could see brown in the scope. That's it. I don't know if I actually hit him or whatever. The way I'm trying to get rounds off. But apparently, either him or me one hit this thing, because it sped him up. And when he come by us, he swatted his arm. Now my cousin's feet are literally 16 feet above the ground. He missed his feet by about that much. And when he hit that drill stem pipe, it broke it like they were toothpicks. Well, in a ladder stand that leans up against a tree, the tree is like this, and the ladder stand leans like this in an angle. When he clipped those legs out from under it, the stand comes to the ground. And when we hit the ground, all bets were off. We didn't care if we had guns, whatever. We hiked. We launched. We looked like Forrest Gump and fast forward.
Wow.
And
you're only 15. I mean, you know, that's.
I grew up in the woods all my life, and like I said, the thing is, we were right at about a mile and a half away from my grandfather's house. We covered it in probably 5 minutes. My cousin, like I said, he left me. He was gone. He hit the door and going crazy. Now, when my grandfather found out what we had done, I was in trouble. He didn't say nothing else to me the rest of the day. He just told us to all stay in the house, and he went out. He was gone most of the day. What he was doing, I have no idea. My grandfather wasn't one of those people you question and talk.
Mm-hmm.
He told you to do something, you did it, didn't ask questions. He just wasn't like that.
So you never had a conversation? He'd never said to you, watch out, there's stuff in the woods? Or
not at that time. But see, I just moved in with him, had been there. I was on and off there over the years, but I had just actually started staying with them that summer. And that's where I was living at from then on. Now, Christmas came and went. New Year's, the day after New Year's, the 2nd, he comes in there, and like I said, my grandfather was a no nonchalant kind of person. Look, I thought my name was Boy for the first couple of years of my life because that's just the way he talked. He walks into my bedroom at 5 o'clock in the morning and says, "Boy, make sure you get your stuff up. Go down there to the stable and saddle your horse." He said, "Mine's already ready." He told me to grab my rifle. Now, this is another rifle. That was my new rifle. And see, I'd left it in the woods. Shotgun, rifle, everything was left. We didn't know. We ran. When we hit the ground, it almost, I don't say I didn't knock all the air out of us, but we just ran.
It's quite a drop, isn't it, as well? I mean,
yeah, but the adrenaline's running in. Look, we hit the ground and bounced and was gone. Now, the next day, I was sore as I don't know what. My cousin left that day, and he didn't come back for a long time. He was crying to the point my grandmother had to call her daughter to come get him. And like I said, to this day, he won't go in the woods by himself. But like I said, he had me get up. We went and got all the stuff up. I grabbed my 44 Magnum lever action. He grabbed his, which was not unusual. And we went down there. Now, I'm putting my saddle on my horse and everything. And he walks over to the privy of the barn, which has the sweet feed and all that kind of stuff in it. He grabs this little bitty, it's like a little tote sack. It's made out of like burlap. I don't know what's in it. Didn't ask him what was in it. He got that and had a rope tied to it, and he looped it over the horn of his saddle. He said, "I want you to go show me exactly where y'all were." That's when I freaked out. I was like, Papa, because that's what we called him. I said, "Papa," I said, "look, I don't know if we hit this thing or not, but it's big and it was mad. We need to get some more people to go with us down there, and we need to get. I don't think these guns are big enough." He said, "That is not what I asked you. I told you, boy, get on your horse, take me to where y'all were." Yes, sir. So we get on the horse, and in about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, because I'm actually slow walking. I don't want to go back to this place because I don't know if this thing can be around or it, whatever. We get back there, and the remnants of our stand is there. It's actually been smushed. It looks like it's been run over by a Mack truck. We find my the shotgun my cousin was using. It's been broken half. My rifle, the barrel of it has been bent and warped, and the stock is broken. And the trees in the ground are just tore up. I'm talking about like wild hog, like 50 wild hogs have been in there rooting the whole time. There was, it looked like to me, a little bit of blood smeared on some trees. Now that could have happened from it mangling up the gun and the stands and whatever. I still don't know to this day if we hit it or not. But if we did, it did not affect it. because like I said, it went by us, slapped, and it went to the, all right, if I'm standing here, when it came by us, it ran like this. When it went this way, we hit the ground, we went that way. Because it ran by us, swatted, and kept going into another cover of trees that was back there. And it was making some god-awful noises whenever it came up through there. I won't never forget those noises it made forever. But anyway, we gathered all that stuff up. I took a rope off the horse and looped it through the stand, and we picked everything up there. And he reached over on his saddle. He told me to go on. He said, I'm telling you now, don't ever, ever, ever come back here again. I don't care what, don't come back here again. He took that sack off that horse. He walked over under that tree where we had that stand on and set that sack down. He got on his horse and we left. And when we got back to the barn, that's when he told me about the boogers.
Right.
And they had been around that area for years, several years, like back in the, I think it was the late part of the 50s, early part of the 60s. These things had been so wild and rampant there. One of the neighbors, I'd heard about him dying, but I didn't know how. It was my grandfather's best friend that lived right down the road from him. These things actually broke into the barn where he had some cows birthing it and killed him.
Right.
This is the point where I put a show up. I've got a show called Booger Valley where it talks about my grandfather and them all. They went down there and set that valley on fire. That joined my grandfather's and his best friend, and I actually own all of that now. They set that on fire. We called it Booger Valley to run them out of there. Right. I still own it. You can still go out there now, and they're not hard to find. My grandfather taught me how to stay away from them, taught me the signs to look for to stay away from them. And as I got older, I was like, well, if I know what to look for to stay away from them, I should be able to find them, to turn that around and be able to find them. So I kind of reversed engineered it. And because of what I used to do, I had a lot of training in finding people that don't want to be found. So I just added a few things to that, and I can usually if you've got waterways on your property, you're more than likely going to have a squatch if it don't do nothing but move through the area. Or if you've got woods that don't a whole lot of people go to a whole lot, they will set up what I call little camps here, there, and everywhere else along those riverways and streams.
Yeah. Green corridors as well. I mean, everything streams lead to rivers, bigger places.
Well, they use them. What I believe that I've come through, I've been doing this research for over 20 years. What I believe that I've come to figure out is they use them like roadways. Because think about it, streams and riverways, even if they dry up, they don't move. A bend may come or go, but one now could have a little squatch, and over the years of them migrating back and forth over that, those patterns are going to be, there's going to be locked into them. That's like deer. You can go in and cut a whole forest out and leave little strips of woods. Those deer will start using those strips that you left later on when the woods grow back. Most of the time, they'll still, even though they got plenty of cover, they'll still use those same corridors. These things do basically the same thing, I figured out.
Yeah. So have you got a particular research area?
Well, I used to. I didn't call myself a researcher. I just got into doing photographs and the recordings and the castings and collecting samples. What I did was I went out trying to figure out what these creatures were, why they did what they did. And my approach was what I call the Jane Goodall approach, where I didn't actually want to interact with them. I would go out, figure out where they were going to be at, and I would set up anywhere. I tried to stay about 300 yards plus away to observe them doing what they do in their natural habitat. Because if you put yourself in that, then they're not doing what they normally will do. And that's what I was trying. I was trying to figure out why they do the tree knocks, why they do the tree breaks and stuff. Well, if they're fooling with me, that's not what they're normally going to do. It doesn't make it, But I've never, ever, over the years of doing it, I've been 300 yards away and been busted by them. And like I said, I'm a long range precision shooter. That was my profession. Like I said, when I say I was setting up 300 yards away, I'm looking through a 6 by 14 with a 50 power. I'm looking through a sniper scope, and that's no distance for that. We qualified at 800 yards on a 3x3 target.
Yeah,
That's a target that big that you have to put 3 rounds on at 800 yards just to qualify. So
yeah,
like
you guys shooting 1,200 like on the regular. Yeah.
So like I said, that's what I would do. But I've never ever not been busted. Like when I would go out and stay overnight, I would take and make a mock camp scene, tent, everything else, and put a recorder in there or a cell phone just playing on a loop, so people talking or whatever. And I would back off upwind instead of hide up about 100 yards away, and that's where I stayed at to watch these things come in, how they would circle around the tent. They'll do circles, wide circles. And and if they don't pick up anything that too much doesn't, I guess, set off their radar, they'll come in a little bit more. And I've watched them go around my campsite, and they'll just do circles. And when they figure out which direction the wind is, they'll stay below that. And that's when they come into the tents. They would sneak up to the back of the tent and sniff, or it looked like what they were doing. They would come in and turn the coolers over. I've seen one literally look like what I call army man crawl up to where they could get a hold of the cooler, because I had left apples up by the cooler. They got them, and as soon as it got turned around and it thought it was far enough away from that tent, these things are fast. I don't care what anybody tells you, these things are fast. This thing went from a army man crawl, almost like it was on springs, popped up on 2 legs and went under. And when I say fast, I've been in a truck trying to get away from some that we had teed off by accident, and there was a field on this side of us. I'm passenger, guy driving. There's a squatch out in the field keeping up with us, and I said, I don't know how fast you're going, but you might want to put a little bit more pep in your step. He said, we're doing 50. This thing was, it was almost 50 miles an hour. This thing was in a field hurdling over 5-strand barbed wire fence like a hurdler, never slacking up. It was able to actually get out in front of us, cross the road, and go off. But we had teed this thing off to no end, though, so it was really, really, really not happy with us. We were trying to get it to leave these people alone, so we went in aggravating it to actually get it to follow us away, so we could set some stuff up to keep it from coming up to this house. And it worked a little too good.
Right.
Well, that goes along with this. The house let me turn the light on so you can, I don't know if y'all can see this or not. You see this?
Oh, yeah.
That was done by an autistic little 5-year-old. That's what was coming up to his window at night that he called the hairy man.
Oh, wow.
That was the house that we were trying to get them to. Like I said, that was a 5-year-old autistic boy did that.
Wow.
Oh.
Now, like I said, that's what I tell people. It's like, they say, well, they don't listen to kids enough. It's one thing I tell people is, that little boy he didn't understand the whole he's young enough still. He doesn't understand the concept of lying. And then it still doesn't make sense to him because he's autistic. It doesn't compute to him.
Right.
He kept telling his parents that the hairy man that smiled at him was scared him because he didn't like when he smiled. The noises that the doggy made.
Oh.
And I was sitting there talking to him, and I couldn't understand what he's talking about. The sound the doggy made. Well, they had a little basset hound. Well, this dog goes over and gets this rope that it's playing with, and he's just shaking it like this, and he's going. Arr! He goes, "Yeah, mommy," like that, but way louder. This thing was coming up, tapping on his window and stuff, and trying to interact, and like I said, growling and showing it. He said it's smiling, but it's showing its teeth. That ain't smiling. That thing is being aggressive. But like I said, he did that out of play. That's out of Play-Doh that he did for me.
Wow. Yeah, so a family that their child is obviously being affected and very close to their child, there's a lot of concerns, that as a parent, obviously you're gonna, like, if your kid comes up to you with something like that, with a normal imagination, you're like, oh, that's neat, but something like that will stop you dead in your tracks. And people need help. Where do they go? Like, I that would be something, like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Like, do they call the cops? Like,
No, the cops are not going to help you. And most police departments, because see, I used to be, I worked for the federal government for years. I worked overseas, and I've worked as a police officer in several different districts and a sheriff's deputy. What most people don't know is there's actually call signs that we were told to use to identify this. There was a guy that's on my channel, he's a good friend of mine. He's Chase. He's a truck driver. Well, he just got pulled over in Mississippi. And I told him, I said, well, if you get pulled over, as long as you ain't done nothing really, really bad, call me and I can probably help you out. Well, he's sitting there and this guy now is questioning him. He's done crawled up in his truck. He's going through his log books. He's looking and looking. Well, Chase just asked him, now this is a Mississippi Highway Patrol, highest you can go state-wise in Mississippi. He says, have you ever seen anything weird out here on the roads? He said, I've been doing this for 18 years. I've seen about every weird thing you can think of. He said, well, have you ever seen anything large and hairy? This guy stops the whole interrogation that he's trying to find out anything from. And just looks at him and says, what do you mean by large and hairy? You need to be a lot more specific. He said, Sasquatch, Bigfoot. That was the end of the interrogation and him even caring about looking for anything else. He told him, he said, I tell you what, he said, I'm going to write your boss a ticket for not having the proper paperwork on the trailer. He said, just go sit in your truck. He didn't even want him around him anymore. He said his whole demeanor changed as soon as he asked him about Squatch or anything else he saw. Because I told him, I said, that's the reason why, is because they will lose their job. If they get caught talking about anything like that, they will lose their job. I know a couple of guys that have lost their job just for doing that. But like I said, it's odd. Like I said, you ever listen to a scanner and you hear a 10-5 on a brown cow? 10-5 is animal loose in road. The problem is, like in the police department, there's not any cows in the city. The brown cow is the designation for a Squatch. Oh. Now, since this dog man whole epidemic came in and stuff, we had one called the black dog, and supposedly that was for any upright, hairy big bear creature or something like that. Is the way they kind of like tried to make it nonchalant, but the black dog. Because these are things that most people are not going to think nothing about if they listening to a scanner or whatever, unless you know the 10 codes. And the 10 codes just about are universal everywhere. There's some federal ones that in some different states that use different ones. They're so close that it's not funny.
It makes sense that people report stuff to the police, because if you're unaware and you've just come across something and you're not even thinking Bigfoot, but you want to just report something that you saw that was strange, there must be calls like that come into the police. They probably don't get investigated, but there must be records.
Animal control, or like,
is there something loose? Or
I mean, another instance. This just happened not too long ago, like a week ago. I think it was a week ago. All right, me and Dart Waters and a couple other guys got together. We put up this camera project called the Dog Man Camera Project, where I'm going around putting live action cameras in the area. I actually have one of because the reason why I bought this property here is because of the Squatch activity that was reported around it. This property stayed on the market for over 2 years. I bought 18 acres of land in a house for less than $20,000 because nobody else wanted it. But I like stuff like this because I've got research right in my backyard.
Right.
I have a camera that they've done caught all different kind of stuff in right out back of my house. It is you can go subscribe to the Dog Man Cams It's $5.99 a month, and we're adding cameras all through it.
These things are avoiding cameras, though, aren't they? I mean, they're very clever at avoiding cameras. It doesn't.
They are, and I think I figured out why. I think there's something about IR hurts their eyes, the way their eyes are designed. I just recently come up with that. I can't prove that theory yet.
Interesting.
But what I was going to tell you is, about a week ago, this was early in the morning, right before daylight. I didn't know nothing about this now until later. I went to town. My wife woke up, so she thought she only heard 2 gunshots. The camera is 400 yards away from the main road, which is right in front of my house. She thought she woke up to 2 gunshots. Well, she didn't hear anything else or nothing else, and so she went back to sleep. Later that morning, one of the subscribers emailed her and said, "Hey, did you hear was that vault outside shooting? And why did the camera white out for just a second?" Well, I didn't know none of this. I'd gotten up and before she did, and I'd left and went to town. I was in town a couple of hours, was actually getting gas, and one of the sheriff's deputies that I know pulls up and said, "Man, did you hear the shooting this morning?" I thought he asked me, "Did I shoot something this morning?" I said, "No." I said, "I hadn't shot nobody or shot nothing lately." And he said, "No." He said, over there, right there somewhere by your house, a guy drove up to the sheriff's department and reported shooting at some kind of upright. First, he thought it was a person messing with him. It had jumped in the road. And when he tried to go around it, they went in front of the truck again. Well, here in Mississippi, that's not a wise idea, especially early in the morning or whatever. He rolled his window down and took a 9mm, stuck it out the window, and popped 3 rounds off at it. And it jumped off the side of the road, run off. Well, he went to the sheriff's department, but on the way from the shooting to there, he got to thinking. He said it couldn't have been a person because he was driving a F-150 FX Ford truck. And he said the thing that he didn't dawn on him until he got to thinking about it was the waist was above the hood of his truck.
Wow.
So wow. That's why he's like, I don't know what I saw, he said, but I shot at it. So if y'all find something out there, he said, I'm letting y'all know I'm the one that did it.
Okay. But
we caught that shooting. Now, this is the other thing. I said, well, can I get a copy of that report? He said, you know good and well, Vaught, we didn't make no report of that. He said, the guy came up there. We took his statement. When he left, we went about our business. They didn't write it down. There's no record of it. See, that's why these things are not reported, because if there's not a physical report of it, besides, I wouldn't have known nothing about it until my buddy told me, that's the sheriff's deputy. When I got home, I just walked in. I said, you ain't gonna believe this. I said, so-and-so said somebody shot at something out right around here somewhere. I didn't know it was right here, literally almost in front of my house. No. She goes, no, what's weird is I got woke up to do 2 gunshots this morning. And I just, thought maybe I was dreaming or whatever, went back to sleep. And then she showed me the email where one of the subscribers was live watching the camera, heard the gunshots, and then something whited it out. And I was trying to figure out what whited the camera out until I had my son go out there messing with the camera. And when he would get real close to the camera and walk in front of it, the IR would cause the lens to white flare just for a second. So I think when this guy shot at it, it ran off the road, it run right by here, run right back by in front of that camera.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
But see, that's what I'm saying. A lot of reports are not even given. Even when they give them, you think you're giving it to the law, they're not going to make a report because that's extra paperwork. Then they got to deal with all the other rigmarole. So they take your statement when you leave, it's gone.
Yeah, there's.
I don't. Go on. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Danielle. Yeah, there seems to be like even local and a national and almost like a bigger cover-up kind of thing going on. I hate using that word, but because there's so many people that would have to be involved in it, but there certainly does. The more and more you research or even look into the subject at all, there's just too many incidents that would raise alarm that there should be more of a attention drawn to this, and then it's just silence.
Well, see, that's the reason why they don't make the reports. As an ex-law enforcement officer, see, that's the thing. It's the cover-up is not what most people think. The cover-up is the lack of them making physical reports. Because if there's not a physical report, all you have is word of mouth. Well, they can deny it or they can approve it. But if there's not a physical report to back it up, there's no evidence there. So the cover up is the lack of the physical reports.
But even then, it's just a report. I mean, I don't feel like, for me personally, everybody can be in on this. You know,
Yeah.
It's not that they don't want to be liable for the one. You don't want to be the deputy or the cop that took the Bigfoot report, put it through. Now you're going to be ridiculed and poked at, made fun at by the rest of the department. That's the whole thing about it. That's where the conspiracy comes in. It's because they don't want to be labeled as a nut job or whatever. That's the conspiracy. It's not that they don't. It's not that they're.
That would be the person who's reported it, wasn't it? Not necessarily the police, but
Yeah.
I guess, you know,
Right.
who knows?
It's just. It's basically it's the cover up is the dereliction of duty and not doing what they were supposed to do. Like I said, we're talking about a shooting. That's what most people don't flow into.
Yeah.
I drove and reported firing shots off because the front of my house. Like I said, there's my house, my property is weird. The very front of my yard is actually in the city limits. Everything else is the county. We have an ordinance that says you're not allowed to discharge a weapon in the city limits and only under certain conditions. He went and turned himself in for breaking an ordinance. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, just go ahead.
So how many of these incidents that have, well, I guess they haven't been reported, like that, like the parent and with the child that's seeing it and they're obviously being disturbed by it, you know, where would someone go for help? Like, because there's families that are moving, and if they can't afford to move, like, where do they go? How do they reach out and find some solace or be able to sleep at night? You know, like what is there that where can people go?
That's originally when I started my channel. That was the whole reason why I started my channel. I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm search and rescue, used to be search and rescue certified in multiple different states and multiple different countries. I've had extensive law enforcement background training done, a lot more than normal, because I worked for a company called Blackwater International for almost 21 years. We were trained by some of the best in the world. When I started this channel, when me and DW got hooked up, that's why he got me to start my channel. Was not to, the views and all this stuff. That's nice. That's not, I don't even care about that. A lot of people get on YouTube to be famous. That wasn't what I tried to do. I was trying to set something up to help people because of what I used to do. And I've worked in many different law enforcement things. Anything weird like that, I get calls all the time. About, hey, we got this lady out here that keeps calling us out because this, that, and the other, and this sounds like it's up your alley. So I'd go out, look around. A lot of times it's not Bigfoot or whatever. It's something. When I go to an area to investigate, I'm not going out there with it is Bigfoot. I go out there with the intention of proving that it is not. When I can't prove it's not, that's when it gets all the other stuff. I started this to actually help people in those situations because of techniques that I figured out through the Native American side of things. I figured out some stuff that will actually keep these things away from places you don't want them to be. And it's actually, if people would pay attention, it's readily available. One, I'll tell you, is white oleander. White oleander is poisonous to humans and just about every animal I know of. The old people down here in the South used to plant white oleander around their houses. A lot of people thought it was because it'll kill insects too. They thought it was just to kill insects down. Now I'm going back thinking, what if they were keeping these things away?
Right.
The other one is mugwort. The mugwort is toxic to humans if you ingest it, and it is hallucinogenic if it is burned. It's worse than being on acid or shrooms. And the smell almost smells like pot. The thing is, I've done several investigations around either up north where they have illegal grow places. You'll have squatch activity all around it, but they won't be in where the pot is. And see, there's something about that pot that I think that they associate with that mugwort Because I can go hang mugwort up. Let's say you, one of y'all have one coming up around their house, staying around just aggravating. This is going to sound crazy, but the best way I found to do it is you actually take a woman's pantyhose, the end of it, put a ball about that big of it in the pantyhose, tied knot in it, tied up, and it start hanging around in trees. They will actually, now they're going to hoop, holler, and they're going to scream for a couple of days, but they won't come back up around the house. And then they'll all of a sudden just leave. I don't know if they associate that with the smell of poison or what, but they just leave the area. White oleander, like I said, the problem with that is everybody has pets now. This stuff is, like I said, your pet can go eat one leaf off of it. Within 24 hours, it's going to be dead. That's how toxic it is. So I don't suggest people planting that around because it'll kill you.
Yeah, in Alaska, there's a lot of people who put Irish Spring, like you cut up a bunch of Irish Spring soap and put it in the pantyhose and tie it on your trees that you don't want the moose to come near.
How far are you away from Yellowknife?
From where?
Yellowknife.
Yellowknife? I don't know where that is.
Yellowknife, Alaska. It's up there by where all the frozen roads are that people made famous about the ice road truckers. It's the very far.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I'm down in like near Wasilla, about an hour, almost 2 hours outside of Anchorage.
See, the biggest squatch I've ever seen with my own eyes was up there right outside of Yellowknife. And we went back later and measured it. It was over 14 foot tall.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I've been hearing that more and more that I've been talking to more of the locals, that there's some big angry ones inland. And
yes, ma'am. Have you heard any stories where, up there, they like to take tractor trailers, take the tires off of them. That's what they use for, their storage, because a bear is not going to rip into a tractor trailer and, get in there. So they would use those for storage. I've got stories where one of them this thing was rolled over, and it looked like, the way it was described to me was, the guy said it looked like something used it for a damn trampoline, just smashed the top of it, tore the doors off of it. And he had meat in there, he had a freezer in there with meat in it. And the freezer went out, and the smell is what drawed it from that.
Oh, yeah. Bears will be drawn in by freezers, and yeah.
But this thing
will shred a cabin to get to them too. Oh my goodness!
And why? I don't understand. Except for, I guess it's just they accumulate the smell. When a bear gets in the cabin, the first thing they do is go over and wreck the refrigerator. They will destroy that thing. And the only thing I can think of is the insulation. They say gives off a smell like an ant colony, but they will absolutely destroy it.
Yeah, and and what's crazy is they'll dump the fridge over and like tear out the back of it.
They don't even go in for the food; they just get in for the back.
Right. Yeah.
See, that's the first place I ever seen that they use nail boards or screw boards.
Yeah.
There.
Upside down. Yeah, when you leave your cabin, that's what.
Yeah, I started using that technique around certain people's houses down here in the South that were having these things come up around their windows. Take a big sheet of plywood and put 2-inch screws through it and put it up under the base of the window. And that keeps them, like I said, it works. It works for,
it does. I don't
care if it's a bear or what it is. They're not going to step on it. If they do, they're going to have a very bad day.
It's going to hurt. It's going to leave a mark.
Techniques like that stuff I started deploying whenever people would ask me to help. But I'm talking the people I help was so minuscule in when people that need the help. That's why I originally started the channel, was to try to help people. That's the whole reason why I got with the program and started the Dog Man Camp program. Like, we call it that because the Dog Man is such, you say dog, everything in this community now went crazy over Dog Man, werewolves, whatever. But the thing is like y'all, I'm not trying to get people I'm not trying to make a believer out of somebody. I'm just trying to get people to recognize this is out there. And when somebody tells you a crazy outlandish story, it doesn't make a difference if you believe them or not. You don't have to make fun of them or nothing else, because the people that do have the true encounters that you probably would believe are not going to ever say anything.
No,
because they don't want to be ridiculed.
That's what we try to do here, is to spread awareness and also to create a space for people to share stuff. And like you say, you don't have to believe people, but believe that they're experiencing what they're experiencing. I believe that people are, experiencing things. You don't have to believe it, but people do need a place to come and share what they're experiencing. Who
And
knows? Someone might have something in common with you. You might connect with someone. There's so many things that this community is ended up doing, like a ripple effect of just coming and talking. It's actually people are connecting, and there is, help for people, even if it's just someone who'll listen to you, or like you, Volt, giving a bit of advice of putting some wood with nails around your window, or because these things seem to be encroaching in, Bigfoot, Dogman, they're encroaching on people's properties, although maybe we've encroached on theirs. But the thing is, we had a guest on, Terry and her son, last week, and they're pretty much, this lady's like parking next to her door. She gets out of her car and she's straight into the house, and these things are making them to retreat because she's frightened, and they're pushing her. Well, she's allowing them. I feel like
that's
nowhere to
territorial.
live.
they're picking up on that, and these are like prisoners of their own property, almost in their own house, and they can't go and enjoy the backyard or things like that. And maybe it's just a case of people can reclaim their place if they know the right things to do, and they're not going to cause any harm. I feel there's a middle ground that can be met, if people just can be given the right advice of what to do. Because it's a shame,
Well,
to
if
not
you
say,
give
like,
them, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile.
yeah,
And that's the thing. You have to stand your ground with these things. Now, I'm not telling anybody, don't get me misunderstood. I'm not telling anybody to pick a fight with them, but you have to understand, you have to have a stance. If these things, because if not, eventually they're going to, for the people that don't know this, they will come into your house, and they don't have to use a door. They don't have to use a window. I've seen them tear out the side of a house to go in. Like I said, I actually don't recommend you shoot at them unless it's a last resort, because it's not the one you're shooting. It's probably his buddy that's with him, or even if you do shoot it, you're probably not going to kill it right then. And a wounded animal is the worst thing to have, because it can still get you and kill you.
Yeah. There's lots of other, much easier stuff like lights, cameras, maybe things like that do help people. It's a mixed bag, actually, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. I figured out, like I said, with the lights we have in the backyard. All right, I've got regular lights. They have that's never bothered them. As soon as I put up a camera with an IR light, and it's not a real bright one, I could tell they stayed right around the perimeter of that light. Well, I got in a 850 cm. It's not lumen. It's however they do those, but it's a Q beam. Well, I went out there one night, and where one of them was, and it was just acting goofy. Well, I hit it with a regular 1,000-watt stream light, and you could tell it was bothering it, but it was just standing there like it would divert its eyes or whatever, but it wasn't moving. I then took that down, and I was trying to get it where the camera could see it. So I hit it with that infrared spotlight, and when I did, it looked like I threw hot water on him. He just took out, ran. So I'm wondering if those IR lights don't hurt their eye, because their eyes are different than our eyes. They see way better at night. What if that IR spectrum, because it's a light spectrum, it's a wavelength, what if that does something to hurt? It's like sunburn to us. If you stare into the sun without protection, it burns your eyes. What if that does that to them? That wavelength of light.
It's a possibility, isn't it? I mean, anything is literally possible.
That's something I'm trying to put into my. Like I just got into doing the recordings and gathering more evidence. I've got hooked up with Mr. Barry Browning. That's going to be my new research partner, and we're on a quest to cover the whole state of Mississippi. And then from Mississippi, instead of doing the whole shotgun effect, we go here, cover Mississippi, and then the next state we go to has to be touching Mississippi. We move into that state, and then from that state we take another adjacent state until we cover all of them. That's my goal, is to cover all of them. My other goal is, me and DW, we want to put a live, see, these cameras are live. I can go, as long as I get cell phone service, I can put this camera there and you can access it wherever you are in the world for the Dogman cams. I want to put one in every state.
That's a good idea.
Well, I'm talking about that's the way we're going to get covering ground, is how we're going to get this going out, like what y'all are doing on the 168 and stuff. I've never been a part of nothing like that. I've been on other search and rescue stuff, and the way he's talking about doing it, and see, that's the way I'm doing what I'm doing. I put together an investigation team. I'm building it like we used to do ops. The first thing I put together wasn't the research team. It was the intelligence gathering part. And we have went through the DNR and pulled out every odd animal death occurrence for the state of Mississippi. Then we went through and pulled out everything that was just odd on top of that. And we're making clusters. And around those clusters, it's weird. Different parts of the state will have just a circumference of clusters, but there's nothing in the middle. Well, with my background, predators, human predators especially, don't do their crimes where they live at. They spread out and do them out. You know, it's usually a ring, and that ring right there, you go back to the center and start out from there. That'll tell you about where they are at. Well, so we're going to put that same stuff into effect. I believe in those rings, we'll find a cluster somewhere. We'll find a clan or more than one clan causing those clusters. So that's how we're going about what we're doing the research. I'm putting a little bit of stuff that I've learned in a law enforcement background and my PMC days, and putting them together to build a team. And I like the way Mr. Gary and stuff is doing stuff, because it's basically the same thing. And me and him got together, and a lot of stuff that he's done and he figured out that didn't work with cameras and stuff. So he, like I told him, I said, it's a wealth of information for me, because I don't have to then spend time on something that he's already tried and it didn't work.
Yeah. It's really great to watch. Like I've been, and I've said it a bunch of times, when Kerry set this all up and started doing the 168 and did it, like he set the bar, like he placed the bar up a bit more, for each expedition. And that's what's going to be really interesting to see each step as this keeps going forward. Like there's actually going to be some progress going forward, instead of just this running around in circles chasing tails,
Yeah, that's what and see, the other thing is, Kerry's a hunter. He understands animals. I think you, Miss Iron, are a hunter, right?
Well, I've been trained to hunt. I don't like to kill anything, so I won't kill anything.
You understand?
Yes, I've been hunting many times.
You understand animal behavior.
Yes.
See, that's the other thing I tell people. I've went out, I've talked to people that have went out that had horrible encounters with squatch. Don't understand why anybody does it. I said, that's because you didn't listen to what the animal was telling you. Yeah, I'm not saying that you can't just run up on one and have a bad time.
Right.
But if you're going out there pushing on that animal, you have to understand that animal after a certain degree, it can't be pushed back anymore. So it has to do only other thing. It can only run or fight. You've took all the run out of it, so now you're left with nothing but the fight. You have to understand when to push and when not to push. It's like if you walk up into a yard, you have a dog that's just growling, snarling, his hair standing up. You're not going to stick your hand down there trying to pet the dog.
Right.
It's just, you have to understand animal behavior. And the other thing is, well, why can't you get good pictures? First off, when something starts going on, your mind is not sitting there thinking, I need to take a camera out and point it at this thing. That's probably not the best thing to do to start with if you already have one growling at you. Just
right.
Hold something up in front of your face and point it at them, because they don't know. I know they know what a gun is, but how can they differentiate a gun from a camera?
Just putting something up.
Yeah, just pointing.
Something up.
Most of the time when humans put something to their face and point it,
right.
bad things come out the other end. So
yeah.
Like I
Well,
said,
I think it's great what you're doing, that you're actually going out and doing something, because, there seems to have been a lot of time where people have just been talking and not
that
doing
is
anything. And it feels like there's been a big shift has come, where there are a select amount of people that are actually doing something more positive and proactive now. I'm not expecting hardcore evidence. I think that's too much to ask of anybody.
well,
But we must be able to come together and share information that might lead to something. Who knows? But the more people share, the more information we've got to sift through, to look at. Who knows? There's just we have actually come to the end of the hour, and I've got a show on my other channel in 10 minutes. So
I'm sorry.
we'll do it again. We'll have you on
Yeah,
again,
No
because there's
problem.
more to talk about.
Well, y'all are more than
Questions,
welcome. I've
too.
been trying to get Miss Iron Dagger over on the channel, and I've been trying to
Oh,
get a hold of her for a while.
Oh,
there you go. You can hook up after the show
yeah.
and swap email addresses. But look, thank you so much for coming on tonight, Vault Keeper. It's been very interesting talking to you. Again,
Yeah.
thank you, Jackie, for joining me again on Sunday Encounters. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Sorry if I've not got to any questions tonight, because it's been fascinating
Yeah.
listening to Vault talking about his experiences. But if you've got nothing to do in 15 minutes, come over to Hidden Existence. Going to be talking about some very interesting stuff. It will be. It will be, I promise you. But until then, everyone, have a great night, have a great week, and see you all soon.
Thank y'all for having